Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to this 12th session of Daily Quranic Reflections with Dr. Aslam Abdullah. My name is Muhammad Abdul Aleem. On behalf of Islamic City, welcome to all of you. And we'll be getting started with Juz 12 with Dr. Aslam Abdullah today. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Aslam.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أحمده وأصلي على رسوله الكريم. Today we are on the 12th juz of the Quran, 12th part of the Quran, which comprises 170 verses from Surah Al-Hud, which is the 11th chapter of the Quran, and Surah Yousuf, which is the 12th chapter of the Quran. Surah Yousuf has the distinction of being the only surah where the event of a prophet are described in greater detail. In Surah Al-Hud, we have the events related to Prophet Hud alayhi salatu wasalam, Prophet Saleh alayhi salatu wasalam, Prophet Lut alayhi salatu wasalam, Prophet Shuaib alayhi salatu wasalam, and Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam in greater details, as well as Prophet Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam. And the Quran is reminding us that the purpose of bringing up those stories is to help us understand the history for the purpose of learning certain lessons from the historical events. It is not to narrate stories. It is not to enchant people with the tragedies and with the happy endings of the stories. It is for us to learn from those stories so that we could reflect on our present and ensure that when we leave this world, we leave it as a better place than what we had received. The greater details that we would find in the stories of all these prophets whose names have been mentioned is that each community, or the prophets who were sent to each community, warned the people of a specific issue and a specific problem. The case with Saleh alayhi salatu wasalam was related to animal rights. The case with the Shuaib alayhi salatu wasalam's people was related with the trade and what we call the business events. The issue with Lut alayhi salatu wasalam was moral degradation and practices that were not sanctioned by the faith. With the case of Prophet Hud alayhi salatu wasalam, it was the arrogance. And with the case of Ibrahim Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, it was total rejection, regardless of the rational and clear understanding of the faith. With Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, the story was slightly different. Here the Quran describes the struggle of a person who was abandoned by his brothers, who was sold as a slave, who was imprisoned for his righteousness. Then, because of his knowledge and because of his understanding of the inner dimensions of human mind and human thinking, he got elevated to a status of a minister or an influential person in the court of the king of Egypt. And then again, after ruling over the land and after bringing the prosperity to the people, he again rejoins the family, and the family accepts and acknowledges the wrong that were done against him. So in the case of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, we are reminded that this inner strength is the most important thing in one's determination to overcome all the difficulties. So these are the major themes that we see in this part. I will focus on a few aspects that deserve our understanding and explanation. The first one is the verse 7 of Surah Al-Hud, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is again repeating what has been earlier said, that He is the one who created this heaven and earth in 6 different stages, 6 different phases, 6 different eons, whatever term we want to use, but not 6 days. And His throne is on water. What does it mean that His throne is on water? Water is the source of human life. Water is the source of the life in the universe. Without water, life would cease to exist. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that His throne is وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. That He is the one who has the authority over all resources of the universe. It's not the human beings who control these resources. It's not a particular ethnicity, a particular group, just because of their geographical location of a particular natural blessings of God, that they become its owner. No, it is not. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has the utmost authority over the resources. His throne, His authority, al-ma, over the resources, over the essence of life, over the source of life. And why? What does it mean? It means that the people have been given access to it so that they could prove that they are worthy of these blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by being equitable, by being egalitarian, by being just. So it is not a mystical statement, rather it is a very practical and pragmatic statement that God is the source of and has the authority of over everything. And then if He has opened these resources to human beings, it is for the purpose of giving them an opportunity to prove to them that they are worthy of the blessing that God has given to them. Now, what if they don't prove worthy of the resources of God? Some of them would face the consequences of their denial and their negligence in this world. Some may face it in the life hereafter. For instance, you know, on the freeways, we know that we have the 70-mile limit in California. Even if we are driving 80 or 90 miles and there is no cop, we may not be arrested or we may not be given the ticket if there is no camera and there is no policeman and if no one reports against us. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying us, that regardless whether there is a camera, there is a cop, every action that is being performed and every kind of deviation that takes place would be held accountable. Sometimes people get the consequences in this life, and sometimes they would get the consequences in the life hereafter. But the consequences will come. And that is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that He is in authority, He is the one who is in control of things, and things will unfold at their given time. So this verse is a powerful verse which reminds us of the majesty, of the grandeur, of the omnipresence and the omnipotence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this universe. Let's go to the next verse, which is 9 and 10. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing a general attitude of His creation that they have developed as a result of their uh, lack of faith or lack of understanding of the divine faith. And what is that? That whenever they find themselves in a distressful situation, they lose hope of things at the individual level and as well as community level. They don't see far and they don't plan to act on the basis of their understanding of the divine guidance to overcome the difficulties that they are facing. But when the distress is removed and they return to their happy state of affairs, they forget that they were once in a state of distress, and they forget that they have to be grateful to God for being out. Rather, they say that it is they who basically brought themselves out of that kind of situation. In other words, they come to God only when they realize that they are in a state of distress. And then once they are out of it, they go back to their old style of life, style of thinking, and they become somewhat arrogant in their attitude. And we have seen that happening throughout our human history. But when calamities take place, when all those kind of events that we describe as harmful events take place, then you would notice that the number of people going to mosques, going to churches, going to temples increase, even at the risk of their own lives, as we have seen during the coronavirus pandemic. But observe it, once this crisis is over, you can empirically test this particular verse by looking at the relationship of people with God afterwards. They would again go back to their life. Giving you an example from no other place than what they call the greatest democracy in India. They were in a lockdown for 3 weeks. And yesterday, when they opened the lockdown and eased the situation and opened the liquor shops, there were miles and mile long queue for people who wanted to buy the liquor. These were the same people who were visiting the temples, who were visiting the places of their places of worship, who were calling on their deities to relieve them of this kind of distress. And the moment they are out of that kind of situation, look what happens. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing out to the people in general, not just Muslims, but the people in general as well. There's another thing that is mentioned here. It is in relation to Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, though I have not picked up that particular verse. But the verse is that Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam is telling people that I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not asking from you anything. I'm not asking money. I'm not asking prestige. I'm not asking any position. My purpose in delivering this message is to ensure that you secure your present as well as your future. He's telling that Allah would always exist regardless of their acceptance or their rejection. But if they accept the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they will secure their present as well as their future. And what is the security for the future? For the present is that they would live in a state of content, that they would live in a state where they would not be in panic, they would not be in tension, they would not be in anxiety about their existence, about their presence in this world, about their security, about safety, about peace, and all those things, because they would believe that it is God whose laws would ultimately ensure peace and stability and security and all those things. So that point needs to be understood, that the message does not demand anything in its material sense from the people. The message empowers people to take life in their own hands and then lead that life on the basis of a disciplined and principled manner. Let's go to verse 1178. And this is a very, what you call, intriguing verse in its translation. It is about Lut alayhi salatu wasalam, when the angels were visiting them, the people who had a different life orientation, a different style of life. And majority of them were involved in that style of life as far as their sexual behavior was concerned. They came with evil intention to the house of Lut alayhi salatu wasalam to get hold of those angels. And if you look at the translation, you would certainly be disturbed by what is being translated here, which says, "My people, here are my daughters." You can have them. This translation is disturbing. How can a prophet offer his daughters to the people who have deviant mind and deviant understanding in order to save them from the sins that they are committing? So, what we need to do is to understand this particular verse within the entire Quranic message and Quranic context. A prophet is like a father of the community, and everyone in the community is like his son or his daughter. And what Lut alayhi salatu wasalam is saying, that you have come with evil intentions to get hold of these male guests. They are women in the community. They are my daughters. You can have matrimonial relations with them, because Quran
Dr.
where
Aslam, I think,
conjugal relationship between a man and a
sorry,
woman take place. And it is in this particular context that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is repeating that verse, that Lut alayhi salatu wasalam is reminding them that they are women and they should have conjugal relations, they should have matrimonial ties with them. So it is not about his daughters. In fact, the issue is biological, which is not the case in the Quran. Quran would never uh, say and recommend anything that goes against its own ideas and its own principles. And the main principle in the Quran, as far as the relationship between man and woman is concerned, is that they should be within the confines of marriage. So this needs to be understood also. Let's go to verse 114. It's a long verse, and I've chosen it says Waqim as-salat, uh, taraf layl, uh, and innal hasanata yuzhabna sayyiat. That if we keep on doing good, we will be able to erase evil deeds. Someone once asked that, I have drawn a line. How could I erase that line? That line would always be there. What you can do is that draw a bigger line so that the smaller line may become insignificant. And it is in this particular context, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding the believers that if they have done anything wrong, if they have committed anything wrong, they should not be helpless. They should not feel helpless. They should not feel hopeless. They rather substantiate their life with good work. And once they start doing good work, the evil would evil behavior and evil actions that they had done would become irrelevant and insignificant. And in some cases, they would be removed from the book unless they deal with the issues of injustice, unless they deal with the issues of the rights of other people. So this is also very significant for us to understand that even if we have done wrong in our life, if we have made mistakes, even if we have committed sins, but if we replace what we have done with something good and develop that attitude that we would not repeat those evil things, then they would be erased or they would become less significant in our life, and their influence will not be as much as otherwise people think they, they, they are. Also, again, the Quran is repeating a very uh, important message that وَمَا ظَلَمْنَاهُمْ وَلَكِنْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُم, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not commit wrong and does not commit oppression against anyone. Time and time again, Allah is reminding people that He's right. He's not putting people into this oppressive mode. He is not hurting them. He is not doing wrong things to them. It's people who are hurting themselves by being unjust, by being arrogant, by being, depriving other people of their rights and all those things. So it is something that Allah wants us to make it part of our theological understanding. That rather than blaming others, rather than blaming God, or rather than blaming shaitan all the time, let's assume the responsibility is shaitan only whispers. It does not force our hands to do certain things. It does not lead us to the liquor shop to buy liquor. It does not lead us to, uh, state power to exploit others and to deprive other people of their human rights. So we do that kind of thing. It only whispers and remind, but we are the ones who do the actions. And it is that issue that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing to us. Let's come to the last one, which is the Surah Yousuf's 5th verse. And as the Quran says, that it is describing the best stories to us so that we could learn. And indeed, in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, there is a lot of learning. He is from the family of the prophets. He is the son of Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, who is the son of Ishaq alayhi salatu wasalam, who is the son of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. So a whole line of prophets. Imagine the kind of piety that you will expect from that house. But when Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam dreamt that he is being prostrated by the stars. And when he shares the dream with his father, he tells him not to discuss it with his brothers. لا تقصص رؤياك. Don't describe your dream to them. What is it the Quran alluding through this narration? What is the moral? What is the message that the Quran is giving? That unless people are in their righteousness and unless people believe in the dictates of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fully and completely, and even then there is no guarantee that they act in a decent and in a just manner. Don't discuss your dreams, your ideas, your future understanding, your future planning, your uh, aspirations to others, because it is quite possible that they might act against you. It is quite possible that they might try to bring you down. It's just a historical experience that we see. Throughout human history, we have seen that many times the greatest challenge has come from those people who were very close to you. The rejection has come from those who were very close to you. And this is what the Quran is saying, that everything has to be measured in that sense. Unless you believe that the person whom you are sharing your ideas and your secrets and your dreams and your aspirations is righteous and he or she would help you in achieving them, don't discuss it with them because they might reject you and they might create problems. As we see with the case of the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, they were so jealous of his uh, physical strength and physical attributes, and so jealous with his relationship with his father, so jealous with his wisdom, that they tried to first kill him. And when they realized that that should uh, pose a problem, they threw him in a well out of jealousy, out of that uh, extra attributes that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had. So one has to be very careful. This is what the Quran is leading to us. The Quran is also leading to us that we should be aware of all these kind of things. And even if we are put in this harm's way, we should not lose hope in our own ability to get out of that. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was sold as a slave. He worked in the house of an elite of Egypt as slave. Imagine what slavery does. You can look at the history of this country and you can look at the issues that those people who were once brought here as slaves have been facing, even though slavery has been abolished. What kind of psyche it creates, what kind of in what you call the neurological issues it creates among those people who had gone through this or whose generations in the past have gone through this kind of thing. Yet, in this kind of situation, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam maintains his character, maintains his independence, and maintains his autonomy, and does not fall into temptation of anything. And he's jailed for that. And yet, he does not complain about it. He leaves the matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to absolve him from the allegations that were leveled against him, allegations of immorality, of lewdness. And he waited for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to intervene and then speak on his behalf through those who had made the accusations to absolve him from any kind of crime or any kind of sin. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that if you are sincere, if you are truthful, there will come a come a time when your truth will be recognized and your truth will be accepted. And the allegations that were leveled against you would certainly be washed away, and then you would come out free and respectable out of those allegations and out of those accusations. And then what happened in the case of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam? He became the minister in the Egyptian government, and then he advised people to deal with the famine and the drought in a manner that they would not suffer the consequences of those things. So it also talks about the planning. Remember the dream that was brought to him, that, you know, 7 fat cows and 7 hungry cows. So he understood what was going to come based on his understanding of the cosmology and the topography of that area and all those things, and they advised people. So what he did, he asked them to be prepared and to plan. And that is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is alluding to us, that always keep the futuristic understanding of things in mind. You can make analysis. You cannot make prediction, but you can make analysis, and based on that analysis, you can act so to secure your future. So, in conclusion, what we find is that nations in the past were sent messengers, and they refused to follow that message. And they neglected their responsibilities and their own interests, and they suffered the consequences for that. Because when the events or the life became tough for them, they were unable to face that tough and difficult time, and they gave in and they were destroyed. It also tells us that we should not lose hope in any kind of situation. Things would change and do change, but the change would come on the basis of our own determination and our own firm belief in our ideas and the ideals that we hold dear to our own heart and our own self. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aslam. I think one of the earlier verses that you reflected on, which is 9, Surah Hud, verse 9, is very indicative of our time today, where Allah is saying how desperate and ungrateful man becomes when we let him taste our mercy and then withhold it. So at least recently, now for a century, we've been experiencing the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this situation where the entire world has come to a stop, He's withholding, his mercy. And we can see, that even smallest things, that we took for granted, and now we have appreciation for those things now.
And indeed,
So,
if we come out of this, and we inshallah will come out, then you would see the majority of us will go back to old
we'll
style.
go back. Yes, yes. Well, we pray that
except those who are believers, except those who have full faith in the divinity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Well, we pray that as humanity, we do not let this grave situation go to waste, and we do come out of this better than we were before. And hopefully a
Inshallah.
lot of people, will look at this, and inshallah, we'll try to make this into a better world. So we have a question from Zed, and he is asking about this verse. Which verse was this? Just a second.
Verse 46.
This is, verse 40. Verse 46 was one of them. And then he had another one. So let me just bring that up. So verse 46 of Surah Hud. And the question is, can you please reflect on this verse in the context of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam's son rejecting his father, and these days when we have people leaving their faith?
There are two issues that are mentioned here. One is the biological relationship with one's family. And the Quran is very clear about it. وَالَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ, that you will be questioned about those relationships. What was happening is there that the flood was rising. And Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam was constantly pleading with his sons to come to the fold of the believers and to stop rejecting the divine guidance. And he, in a state of defiance, was saying that nothing would happen to me. I would climb the tallest mountain and would protect myself from this flood. And he got drowned. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say and was referring to the pleas of Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam for the mercy of his son. It was saying that yes, you have biological relationship, but if he suffered the consequences of his rejection, that was not due to your fault, that was his own making. So there are two issues here, that the Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam kept on playing his role as a father until the end. He did not say any minute, get lost. I have nothing to do with you. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is telling him that you should not be sorrowful. You should not be sad about what happened, because ideologically he did not fall in sync with you. Yes, as a father, you had emotional ties and you had difficulties in comprehending his loss. But understand that he had nothing to do with the message that you were giving, and especially it is in this particular context when uh, Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam was asked to build a ship and carry all his followers in that particular ship. So it is in that, but if he is not coming, don't think that you uh, would have lost. It's a kind of consolation that God is giving to Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam. So in our context, if there are people who reject the faith, as you see, a lot of people are calling themselves ex-Muslims here in the United States as well as in the other Western countries, should the families abandon them? My own understanding is that no, families should not abandon them. Our understanding is the family should leave the doors open to them, should not entertain their ideas, should not succumb to their way of thinking because of they have different belief, but they should leave the door open, because it is quite possible that the people might return to the divine guidance and divine thinking one day. It's quite possible, because not the door is not closed unless we leave this world. As long as the we are alive, there's a possibility that we might return. So, and then if we lose in that kind of situation, then what we say, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's message that was given to Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, that yes, he is your biological relations, is your son, but he was not one of you as far as the ideas and the ideological strength is concerned.
Okay, and then very quickly, maybe, so there's another question from Zed. Just in a general sense, he's asking, how do we understand verse 69? And I can just quickly bring up this verse in context. We can read the prior verses and the following verses on this. So 69 is, and surely our messenger angels came to Abraham with good news of his son. They greeted him with peace, and he replied, "Peace be upon you." Then it was not long before he brought them a fat roasted calf. So the preceding verse is talking about surely Thamud denied their Lord, so away with Thamud. Um, uh, I'm not sure. So I thought this was about the angels bringing good news to Prophet Ibrahim about his son, and these were angels, and Prophet Ibrahim was treating them as guests. Basically, that's why he brought out the food and the calf, and roasted calf for them.
Yes, yes. The previous verse, Samud, relates to the people of Hud alayhi salatu wasalam, and their denial of the divine guidance and divine understanding and all those things. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was little bit concerned about the continuation of his progeny, because there is a verse in the second chapter of the Quran where Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give the leadership of the monotheistic to his family members. And Allah's response was that my pledge is not for those who commit wrongdoings or who deviate from the path. In other words, the leadership would not depend on the blood ties, rather, it would depend on the strength of the character and on the uh, belief system of the person who would be chosen for that particular role. So Ibrahim والسلام, was an old person, his wife was an old woman, and they were really concerned that how their progeny would continue in that sense. And the angels came to give them the glad tidings, and here, uh, he first could not understand that they were the angels because they came in a form uh, that was reserved only for the angels. And Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam offered all kind of hospitality to those people. And what is being alluded here is that sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create conditions from nothing, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives signs through various means, sometimes directly, sometimes directly, for the good bushra and the good news to the
Okay, and then we have one more question from Sister Lubna. The question is, can you comment on Surah Hud verse 117? For never would your sustainer destroy a community for wrong beliefs. I can bring up that verse.
Yes, please.
وما كان ربك ليهلك القرى بظلم وأهلها مصلحون.
So your Lord would not destroy any town without cause if its people were acting righteously.
Here was saying bizulmin, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be unjust to a people if he realizes, if he knows that the people who are there are the ones who are the seekers of good and who are the ones who are doing good. What is being alluded here is that the people bring hurt to themselves. What is being said, that if the people change their conditions and if the people uh, follow what needs to be followed and what they have been asked to follow, what they have been recommended to follow, then many of the anomalies that would come in society would not exist. And here, what is happening, for instance, uh, let's take the issue of famine. Let's take the issue of flood. It's happening all over the world. Now, what does it mean when the Quran says that we do not destroy if the people are capable of helping themselves or muslihun or are? It's not about piety only, it is about doing things that would help them overcome the difficulties that would come as a result of flood or as a result of famine. So if they don't prepare themselves, and muslihun here would means that the people who prepare, the people who are ready, the people who have thought about it, the people who are acting in a balanced manner. So similarly, if people are not acting in a balanced manner in terms of their behavior and attitude, they would cause problems for themselves and for others. But if they are, then they would avoid all that the trials and all those kind of tribulation that would come as a result of their deviation from the path. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding the believers that they are in control of their things based on their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they can prevent disasters happening provided they take rightful actions.
Right. So, of course, our understanding that Allah is always just and He is not unjust to anyone, basically.
Indeed, indeed, indeed,
And
indeed.
and then the following verse is more illuminating, and I think you alluded this to in one of your previous talks. Had your Lord so willed, He would have certainly made humanity one single community of
Indeed,
believers,
indeed.
but they will never, but they will always choose to differ. This is
Yes,
very relevant to our day today, that whether you look at in between religions or even within the religion, it is in the nature of a human being to keep on dividing ourselves and differentiating ourselves with the other.
indeed. I think this is the challenge that the Quran is posing to us. That much of the differences that exist as a result of your choice. It is not the imposition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He's not interfering to bring you back to unity. It's something that you have to. He created us as one people, but we are the ones who divided ourselves. So the responsibility goes back to us. And if we are facing the consequences of this disunity, then we are responsible for that. Whether it is within the Muslim community or with in relation to other religious communities or any religious community that you would see. You know, the bloodshed that took place between Jews and Christians in the 2000 years history. That was not something that was imposed by God Almighty. It was not God's will that they should fight and they should kill each other. It was they who decided and who chose to differ on their understanding. They could have lived peacefully. They could have asserted their viewpoint and then left it there. The same goes with Muslims. Same goes within the Muslim community. So many differences exist and so many violent acts takes place as a result of one's understanding. And this is what the Quran is alluding that you have the choice. You can overcome those situations by adopting a different strategy. God has given you the faith, and He would not interfere to force unity upon yourself. So that again brings us back to the idea of freedom of choice, free will to human beings, and the accountability for one's action.
Absolutely. So this is a good verse to end our session on. We pray that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us be united in our faith and be united as humanity so that we can be concerned for the entire world, for ourselves, for our families, and may He always guide us and help us understand the message that He has given to us in the Quran. So
Ameen.
you can conclude with your dua,
Yes.
Dr. Aslam.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والله سبحانه وتعالى. We are deficient in our own understanding of your message and your guidance. Show us the right path and open and illuminate us about the real guidance. And if we make mistakes, forgive us for that. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.